Hello, everyone. Dylan here with Dylan's Dialogues. Um, Glad you could join me for another episode. It's been a minute. Yeah, I've been busy with school, which is going well, but definitely keeping me busy, along with my own therapy journey, which is quite emotional. And so sometimes I just don't have the energy, um, emotional energy to be vulnerable anymore. uh, because therapy is quite vulnerable. But welcome back to Dylan's Dialogues. And just a reminder, this is a podcast about storytelling and a bit of education. And it's not meant to replace mental health therapy or medical advice or anything like that. So, just, little disclaimer there, don't sue me. Um, but today I wanted to talk a little bit about crying. Um, I think crying is underrated, especially in the United States. I wouldn't say that I am a super culturally diverse person. I'm want to be more so, but I'm not really quite sure how crying is viewed globally. But I do feel like the United States uh, crying is not it's not something that we talk about a whole lot. It's not something that we do a whole lot. Um, but I'm trying to do a bit more of it. I guess you could say that I'm trying not to suppress the tears when I feel my body sense that I need to cry. I am doing my damnedest to let it happen, but it is not easy. And so I thought it would be a good topic to bring up today. So I did a little bit of research on it and just kind of wanted to share why humans cry, right? So there's three main reasons. The first reason is called basal tears, and they can be thought of as basically like background maintenance. They keep your eyes moist and they kind of protect them from debris and such, and it's really kind of automatic. We don't have to think about it. Our eyes just kind of produce those tears, and we're good to go. The second type is reflex tears. And those are like kind of considered maybe an emergency rinse system. If you got something in your eye, like a chemical or something, you would go to a faucet and try to rinse your eye. Well, this is sort of your body's natural way of rinsing out things like, you have like a strong smell or come across, you're cutting onions or maybe smoke from a fire gets in your eyes and they start to water, right? But the third reason is the reason that I am interested in, and that's emotional tears. And humans are thought to be the only species to actually cry emotional tears. Although I have seen some documentaries where other mammals are crying. They actually show tears, um, but for all intents and purposes, right now I'm talking about human tears. And the reason we cry emotional tears is a form of regulation. It's how our central nervous system regulates our body. And, it's our nervous system is always trying to keep us in homeostasis. And crying is a means of doing that. And we mostly cry to release. Like you can think of it like a pressure valve. Pressure builds, and we need a way to release it. And tears typically provide that release. Um, it's a form of self soothing. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Um, Tears can communicate to others how we're feeling, and connect us with others. And of course, we can cry tears of joy. That is a thing. But specifically, what I'm talking about are more so tears from sadness. We can also cry from being stressed or overwhelmed. But I would say most often when you think of crying, you think of a human that's crying, it's, out of pain and or sadness. And sadness usually from pain. And, obviously, if we're physically in pain, we can cry, but I'm speaking mostly of emotional pain. Um, and more specifically, I'm referring to maybe grief. With grief comes sadness, and usually what's associated with grief is loss. So anytime we experience a loss, we experience grief, we can experience sadness, and then we cry, or we're meant to cry to release that pressure. Uh, and just to touch on grief and loss for a second, that can be so many things. There's so many reasons that humans grieve losses that we don't typically even think of. The first thing that comes to mind probably for most of us is loss through death, and of course that's awful. It's permanent, and there's a lot of grief and sadness associated with loss through death. But there can be so many other losses, losses of relationship that can even feel like death, but in some regards can be challenging to move through because no one did die. And so it kind of gets associated in that what Dr. Ramani refers to as disenfranchised grief. It almost becomes more difficult in some ways because it's not recognized. It's not universally recognized. If someone says, that so and so that I lost, let's say my mother or my mother-in-law or something like that in death, most people recognize that. They understand that that's going to be sad. But loss of a relationship, whether it was your choice or not, it doesn't really matter. It's a loss. Loss of a pet is often underrated and not recognized as fully. But there can even be things like loss of a job. Oftentimes, people who retire don't expect to experience grief, but maybe until they've replaced that routine that they had with something else, it feels like a loss. We can even have loss of identity, and that can cause a loss of meaning and purpose. Yeah, and so of course that's going to cause grief, that's going to cause sadness, and typically it's going to cause us to cry. But I find it interesting that in our culture, specifically in the United States, we're taught to suppress our tears. We're taught to tough it out. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, stiffen up your upper lip, um, grief and taking time to process through pain and loss and tears are considered unprofessional at work. It can be a form of interruption, like you have to take time to grieve. Also, we're not taught. There's something called social emotional learning that they're starting to teach in schools for young people, but it's not really universal yet. And I'm 50. I never learned it, so when you're not taught, and possibly even taught the opposite, not to cry, it's what you know. There's definitely gender norms, in for boys and men. It's considered a weakness. And I would just like to touch on that point. um, if emotional tears are the body's form of regulation, and it's a human thing, um, then how can we consider that weak? Actually, I think it's quite the opposite. It means that you're able to be in touch with yourself, with your body, with what's going on, and you're allowing the natural process of release to happen. And there's nothing weak about that. If anything, I would say it's the opposite. It shows true strength. It shows that you know who you are and you're okay with it. You know, obviously media tends to contribute to this idea of suppressing. There's this heroicism in being stoic. And then, of course, intergenerational patterns that just kind of get handed down. And if no one breaks that cycle, then yeah, of course, again, it kind of goes back to what we're taught. um, I'm probably going to botch her name, but I think it's Anelia Jaffe. She was a student, or he, I don't know actually, was a student of Carl Jung. And they said, what you resist persists. So suppressing emotions doesn't get rid of them. If anything, there's a culminating amount of evidence that we are discovering more and more. It's Bessel van der Kolk that wrote "The Body Keeps the Score," and it's a book about how by suppressing this emotion, the body needs to release it in some way. So if we don't allow the natural release through tears, then we're gonna eventually be plagued with mental health issues, depression, anxiety, to name a few of the top offenders, if you will, and all sorts of disease, especially autoimmune disorders. So, honestly, the real issue isn't crying, it's people's discomfort around crying. Ever notice how, um, if you start to cry about something, someone will immediately say, "Oh, don't cry, don't cry." And I remember telling my therapist about this, because I certainly have, over the last 3 to 5 years, have been on my own journey of, trying to understand myself, trying to learn about social emotional learning, I guess, for lack of a better way to put that. And I've had many people make comments like that to me. As soon as I start to cry, "Oh, friend, don't cry, don't cry." And I brought it to my therapist once, and she said, "Why wouldn't you cry? Of course you would cry. When you cry, it's because there's meaning behind what you're crying about. And usually it has to do with, like I said, loss and grief. And with that, that means whatever it is that we lost, we cared about deeply. It moved us. It meant something to us. It was meaningful to us. Of course we would cry, right?" And so um, she actually said that the next time someone says, "Oh, don't cry," that I could look at them and be like, "Well, why not? Why wouldn't I cry? This is sad. This is hurtful. This is hard," right? So, yeah, tears are there for a reason. And it's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to let it out. Matter of fact, we need to. We need to become a society that is okay with crying. I've even seen people like infants, like it's an infant's like damn near only way of communication for the first, couple of months of life at least, until they start cooing and babbling. And, you know, I've heard parents like, oh, don't cry, shh, don't cry. What? Like, no, tell them it's okay. Tell them they're safe. Tell them that you're here. Talk to them about why they might be crying. Are you hungry? Are you tired? Do you need your diaper changed? But don't tell them not to cry. And by all means, let's stop this, you know, gender bullshit where we teach boys and men not to cry. Because, that teaches them not to be sensitive to others who need to cry. We all need to cry. Crying is human. To be human means to cry, right? Recently, this past weekend, actually, I was coming home from an event, my wife and I, and we turned down the street that kind of leads into our neighborhood. And just out of the corner of my eye, I happened to see this, what appeared to be a man like lying on the ground, kind of flailing his arms, and a dog barking. And I was like, wait, what? Did I just see that correctly? And my wife kind of caught it, and then she was like, was that someone lying on the ground? I said, I don't know. So I flipped a bitch, and as I did, I saw a bunch of bags of groceries and like a gallon of milk on the ground. Like someone was in the middle in the process of unloading groceries. And so I parked my car and we get out. And as we're walking up to the front yard, sure enough, this man who was disabled in some way, it looked like he could walk, but barely. He was on some sort of like a motorized scooter type vehicle, and he was unloading his groceries, and it hit the curb and tipped over. And just the way that he was tipped over, his legs were kind of tangled up in the scooter. He couldn't get out. His dog was there barking for help. And he was obviously trying to kind of wave someone down, but thankfully we saw him. Anyway, cut to the point. Of course, we helped the man up. We helped him get back on his scooter. He said that he was okay. We kind of checked him out, and he didn't seem to be bleeding anywhere or anything. And we brought his groceries in for him. And I was asking him, I said, do you need anything else? Do you need help with anything else? And he reached out to me like he was going to shake my hand. And when I went to shake his hand, he pulled me in and he hugged me and he started crying. And he was so thankful that we were there to help him. And he started to apologize for crying. And I said, it's okay. It's okay to cry. I bet that was scary, lying there by yourself, not knowing how you were going to get up. I'm sure it was scary. And I said, you're allowed to cry over that. You're allowed to cry. And he just kept hugging me and thanking me. It was just this, like, the most real moment of like humanity, right? Like, I don't know him. I've never even seen him before, but in that moment, we were just human together. Didn't matter color, race, creed, religion, sexuality. None of that mattered. He was just a person who needed help and was grateful for the help. So, it's okay to cry. We need to cry. We need to cry more. And I'm right there with you. I'm trying to practice allowing myself to cry and not shaming myself for it. So anyway, I wrote a poem called Cry, and I'm going to read it to you to end this episode. If I can get my composure and actually be able to see. Whew. Ever wonder why humans cry? Tears have meaning. It's the body's release, a pressure valve letting out steam. Holding back tears builds pressure more. Contained composure, the body keeps score. Not created nor destroyed, energy stored. Impending explosion must be transformed. Repressed emotions don't go away. They seek expression as they lie in wait. Lump in your throat as feelings grow. Heavy the chest, fighting it so. Crying regulates the nervous system. It's universal. It's only human. So let the tears fall. It's okay to show. Release it all and steady the flow. I hope you enjoyed that poem, and yeah, until next time.